Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race Race and Strategy Guide. We are heading to the Red Bull Ring in Austria and we are in the Group 3 machinery. Now, if you are thinking we have done this race a few times before, then you are not mistaken, but to be honest with you, it's actually even worse than that. The whole series of daily races A, B and C are an entire copy and paste from a week in May where we did exactly the same combinations with exactly the same settings. So I know PD are in Amsterdam or have been in Amsterdam this week and have maybe not got as much time on their hands, but that's still very, very disappointing indeed. But anyway, the details for this one are 13 laps to get round. We've got tyre weight at times 10, fuel at times 2, soft and medium tyres, both compounds are mandatory. BOP is on, damage is light, it's a rolling start, and slipstream is real. There is a daily race racing strategy guide from that week in May, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. But I did jump on this morning, or Monday morning if you're watching this, not on Monday, and did a couple of races trying out the two kind of strategies that are available to you in this one. Both the soft and the medium tyres being mandatory, so you have the choice of going soft medium or medium soft. First up here, we are going to do the soft and medium strategy. Now, I knew this was not the way to do it, especially from something like P14, probably especially in the car that we decided to choose. But in the 2016 Lexus prototype, now it's not a car you see very often, but I used it in the open lobbies the night before doing this race, where we did some practice of this race. We had a very strong suspicion that it was going to be Group 3 at Red Bull Ring, so we did a couple of open lobby races in Group 3. I used this car, it felt quite nice. I knew it would be the most competitive up against the likes of the Mazda, the Nissan GTR, the Porsche. All the cars that were good at Interlagos last week are going to be pretty decent this week, I would imagine. But I thought, you know what, it's 8 o'clock on Monday morning. If you're going to be a race where you can use a not so strong car, then this is the one to go in. So we're on the soft tyres here, we're under pressure from Tidgeney. I knew Tidgeney would be on the medium tyres here, so elbows were out a little bit at the early part of this race. I didn't want him to get ahead of me. I know he's going to pit within a couple of laps, so if I can keep him behind me, then I'm not going to be able to prevent the undercut. But you know, I'm on the soft tyres, I'm looking to go forward, but you can just see the problem here starting on the soft tyres, especially when you are as far back on the grid as we started here. You know, you've just got a wall of cars in front of you over the course of the first lap, and even if I get by Shelty here, no, half a second further up the road is another 3 cars. So as much as I want to attack and I'm going to take any opportunities that come up, really what I'm trying to do here is try and just preserve these soft tyres as much as possible, because if I start battling too much, if I start, you know, outbreaking myself, then I'm just going to ruin them and I'm not going to get any benefit from them once we kind of the traffic kind of clears in front of me. In saying that though, I did go for a send on Shelty down into the hairpin here, and I think it was a good overtake because it wasn't a poke in, you know, we actually outbroke his Corvette on the medium tyres and got the car alongside his, fully alongside his, into the turn-in point, which is really what you're looking to do when you go for a bit of a dive bomb, if you like. You know, too many people go for a dive bomb and just poke their nose in at the turning-in point, and we'll get half the car alongside. At least at the turning-in point for that overtake, we were fully alongside Shelty's Corvette. There was a little bit of contact, but it's just the nature of the corner. Anyway, we got by the Lexus as well a couple of corners later, and that gave us that all-important clean air up until lap 10. We tried to make the most of it. We weren't setting the world on fire with the lap times, but lap 10, let's come into the pits here. I'm going to get one of the most frustrating penalties I think I've ever had in my life in this game, in GT Sport, in any game possible. So Hogston, good friend of the channel, has actually lost the car going into the pit lane. Now, he was ghosted and I thought, am I going to drive through his ghost or he's going to unghost at the worst possible times? I slammed the brakes on. Now, there was a little bit of contact with the back of his car, but we got a 2-second penalty for that. And very, very frustrating now. The game did say 2-second penalty for colliding with another car. I did collide with the back of his McLaren. It was just a little tiny touch. Had absolutely no adverse effect on his race or my race, but yeah, 2-second penalty. Very, very frustrating. We've made our pit stop here onto the medium tyres. We're in P10. It's not going to be a stellar result. There was a driver up ahead, the Swedish driver, who's actually crossed the line in first place, has actually not changed the tyres, so it could have been a P9, possibly a P8. There was a a Porsche in this one, it did 9 laps on the medium tyres and 4 laps on the soft tyres, who was behind us when we came out the pits. So I think it would be very hard to stop that Porsche from overtaking us. But a P9 was definitely on the cards, and from P14 on the wrong strategy and not the best car, it certainly wouldn't have been a terrible result given the circumstances. But a P12 it was to be in the end. 19 minutes 51 the finishing time for the TCR driver up in P1. So GG's to them. Let's move on to the second race, and this is the one where we're going to actually do the strategy that should be what most people will be doing in this one. And it's going to actually be a very important reason why this strategy works a lot better than the soft and medium strategy, over and above the fact you're just finishing on the faster tyres. And we'll talk about that when we come to the pit stop. But up ahead, you're about to see me do one of the best corners I've ever done in my life. As we go from P14, got ourselves to the inside, got a nice bit of traction, and we overtake 5 cars on that corner. Went from P14, we were just briefly in P14 as a car went down round the outside, but we emerged from that in P9, and that is just the dream when you're on the medium tyres. We've got a little bit of a gap behind us, we've got a little bit of clean air to drive into as well, but I can see those drivers up there ahead are starting to battle already, and I'm thinking, you know what, I think I'm going to catch them by the end of this lap. So at this point I decided, you know what, I'm coming into the pits. I'm going to do the 12 laps on the soft tyres and see if we can make them last today. Now we managed to make them last 10 laps whilst battling, whilst kind of doing some diving and some harsh braking on them when we started on them with the heavier fuel load as well. So I thought, you know what, there was definitely 11 laps in those tyres. We should be able to make them last 12 laps if we are just nice to them at the beginning and with the slightly lower fuel load. So into the pits we'll come here. We'll stick on a set of soft tyres and we'll get an idea of what that pit loss is going to be as well. Now we did come in about 5.5 seconds behind the leader. I know it says 5 seconds now, but we were 5.5 seconds coming down the short straight before the corner, before the pit lane. So into the pits we come. Medium tyres off, soft tyres on, up to the exit of the pit lane, and we'll see what this pit loss is going to be. It's going to come in at 23 seconds, so pretty substantial, but it gives you lots of scope to get a little bit of space on the track. And look at this lovely clear track in front of us. Nobody else has pitted on lap 1. I'm going to give you a very important reason as to why this strategy works better than changing onto the mediums. The temperature of the tyres when you leave the pits is down at 60 degrees compared to 70 degrees when you actually start the race on the soft tyres. Now we know that temperature is related to tyre wear, and because the tyres are cooler, it just means you get a little bit more tyre life out of the soft tyres when you use them in the second stint from a pit stop. So you also have the advantage as well, where if you move on to the medium tyres in a pit stop, obviously they also start at 60 degrees, but they're harder to get up to temperature, and you just don't quite get the performance from them for a good few laps. So the best way to do this race, without a doubt, all the advantages are with the medium soft strategy. But we'll talk about when to pit and your undercuts and your overcuts and your optimal strategies a little bit later on in the video. So that nice clear track, people were actually leaving it till lap 4 and 5 to make their pit stops. Meant that we emerged up in, well, 4th place on the road at the moment. We had a huge gap to some of the drivers. Comfortable here, 5 seconds. Lap 10 here, you can see we've still got plenty tyres left on, plenty of tread left on the tyres, I should say. However, things are not always as simple, and some things your strategy just can't account for, and that is some of the numpties that play this game. So we've got the Czech driver in front of us now. He was just in front of us, or I think he may have just been behind us actually when we made our pit stop. Now he's clearly not made his pit stop up until this point. He's on the medium tyres, he's not read the rules. Now we're going to come for an overtake into turn 1 here. Now I wouldn't normally go for this overtake, but given the circumstances that I've got to manage that gap to the cars behind. I know he's on medium tyres or soft tyres that are dead and he hasn't pitted. I flashed him down into turn 1. I told him I was going to go for that overtake. He just turned in on us and bumped himself off the track. But we were through. I had a very, very strong suspicion what was going to happen here. So he just goes into the side of us, into the hairpin. Luckily we don't spin the car completely around, but he does cost us about 3.5 seconds. And all of a sudden, from being in a very comfortable podium position, P4 on the road, I know that driver's either going to pit or he's going to get a 1 minute penalty. We're now under pressure from P5, 6 and 7 and probably P8 as well, just when we don't want to be, because our tyres are now starting to struggle a little bit. Thankfully we catch back up to them and we get the overtake done down into turn 3 or 4 depending on what you think of the curve on the first straight. And yeah, probably cost us about another 1.5 seconds overtaking that driver. Very annoying. I was very frustrated. You know, he's not in the same race as us and then nearly cost us a podium. Thankfully we do bring it home. You can see the tyres are pretty much dead by this point. The rear left has got very little tread in it, so but you can do the 12 laps as demonstrated there. I think in hindsight, if I'd even pitted on lap 2 or 3, would have got the best, the same result and probably in better shape towards the end, because people left it so long to go for their pit stops. People are leaving it till lap 4 and 5. That won't be the case come the end of the week. But let's go through the strategies just to finish the video off. Your optimal strategy here, you're looking at 8 to 9 laps on the soft tyres, 4 to 5 laps on the medium. I would only do that if you're starting right at the front. You can get the best out of the soft tyres, as you've seen from the race footage. If you're in the traffic, you just don't get any benefit from them. Better than that is to start on the medium tyres, 3 to 4 laps on the mediums, 9 to 10 laps on the soft tyres. That's going to give you the best overall tyre performance, although you will be vulnerable to anybody who tries to do the undercut on you on the same piece of track. So undercut, you've got 1 to 3 on the mediums, 10 to 12 on the soft tyres. You've seen me do the 1 lap on the medium tyres there. Not everybody's going to be able to do that just because they won't be able to preserve the tyres as well. You may be on the controller. It's going to be car dependent, just how good of an undercut strategy you get. Obviously the earlier you pit, the bigger the undercut you get, the worse your tyres are at the end. I think maybe for myself, lap 2 would probably have been better. And you have got the overcut strategy. It can work, it just depends on the circumstances, where you just run the soft tyres right to the end of the race, or right until they're absolutely dead. You want to avoid the traffic. You want to stay in clean air. Strategy is all about actually making your races boring as possible and finding some track to basically just drive about on your own and put in the lap times you know you can do. But that's it for the strategy, folks. It's by no means a terrible race. It's a little bit disappointing and it's a copy and paste week from May. Now I will give PD the benefit of the doubt, the fact that we're in Amsterdam and maybe they were caught short and put the daily races together, but yeah, maybe no excuse either. As I said, pretty disappointing just to have a copy and paste week for the full race A, B and C. However, hopefully you have found this video useful in some way, shape or form, or even entertaining. If you have, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button. Do join me this week for a couple of live streams as well. We'll use some different cars, we'll mess about with the strategy. It's by no means a bad race, it's actually quite entertaining. It can be frustrating, to be honest with you. There's some certain corners on this track that can lead to a lot of frustration, so maybe that's a reason to join. Bit of Womble rage, people do seem to like it in the chat. But yeah, I'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye now.